Hey friends, welcome back to our remote coverage of CES from here in sunny Pretoria, South Africa. It's a good 77 degrees Fahrenheit, or about like 27 degrees Celsius, somewhere in there. I don't know how to convert on the fly. Anyways, today what I want to talk about, now that the dust has settled from AMD's keynote, we got all of the good information. Other people have had time to have an interview with Lisa Su and all of that. I want to talk about Radeon 7 and what we're expecting there, what it looks like we're going to get, and maybe why we're so disappointed about it, because there's a whole host of reasons why it's not the GPU that we were really expecting from AMD. Before we get into all of that, I do want to let you guys know that we do have a Patreon. If you want to support us directly, maybe help us to get to CES next year, you can check out that in the top link in the video description, patreon.com/UFDtech, if you so desire. But with that being said, let's talk about it. If you haven't watched our AMD recap or the cut down keynote that we did, hey, there's a wildebeest. There's a bunch of zebra and wildebeest down there. We're not going to get too close because, especially young male wildebeest, they're known for charging. We don't want to fight them. Anyways, so Radeon 7 is the successor to Vega. It's supposed to replace the Vega 64, maybe. I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's definitely a better GPU than Vega 64 that's out on the market right now. They showed off slides showing that it's anywhere from 30 to 60% better in certain professional applications, and then about 20 to 30% better in gaming applications than the Vega 64. Obviously, the price of $700 puts it up right against a 2080, RTX 2080 from NVIDIA's side, and this was, I guess, a controversial statement that I made yesterday, that the 2080 costs $700 MSRP, because people were like, no, it costs $800. That's the Founders Edition. If you go on Newegg right now, you can find at least 3 different 2080s that are selling for $700 flat. There was a 2080 that was on sale for like $670. These are already out there in the retail channels. They're selling for $700 because that's the MSRP of the AIB partners, whereas $800 is the Founders Edition. AMD didn't say anything about the pricing of Radeon 7 being less for AIB partners. They just said it costs $699. It's a disappointment if you put it next to the RTX 2080, because the RTX 2080 is the same price as the 1080 Ti, and they're about the exact same performance for $700. And then it looks like the Radeon 7 is the exact same performance for the exact same price. The only thing that I can see that Radeon 7 has going for it is the fact that it has a 4096-bit memory interface, and then 1 terabyte per second of memory bandwidth, which is an insane amount. It's over double Vega 64. But this is also another comment that came up in our video yesterday, is a lot of people saying it seems like AMD is releasing a general workforce card. This is a compute card. This is something that's meant for content creators, which would be true if they were marketing that way at all. They're not marketing this like it's a Vega Frontier Edition like they did when the Vega 64 came out, where they had a distinct gaming brand of the 64 and a compute brand of the Frontier Edition. They just said that the 7 is meant for gamers and showed off some content creation benchmarks, which doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot when the gaming performance is exactly what we got from the 1080 Ti 18 months ago, and it's for the exact same price. Obviously, as I mentioned, the 16 gigabytes of HBM2 that this card is going to have is the reason why it costs so freaking much, because they're not going to be able to produce that for anything less. It doesn't seem like. There were the rumors that this card costs $750 to build, let alone even ship at retail. So it could be that AMD is doing us a favor by having it ship at $700, but it just kind of shows that this wasn't the card that we were excited for. The gaming benchmarks that they showed against NVIDIA, if those are the best gaming benchmarks that they could do when they first present this card, I'm not excited for what's going to come out when we actually see how it performs in the rest of the games. $700 is obviously the biggest price issue with the Radeon 7. It's what makes the performance so gosh dang disappointing, especially when you compare it to an RTX 2080 or even a 1080 Ti, which you can find going for about $400 to $500 out on the open market. So $700 to just compete with NVIDIA doesn't seem like it's all that enthralling. We finished filming the video and we got back to the office, and well, Jensen kind of sums up a lot of the thoughts that we have. Obviously, if I'm quoting Jensen, people might think I'm an NVIDIA shill, but he did say this: the performance is lousy, there's nothing new. There's no ray tracing, no AI. It's 7 nanometers with HBM memory that barely keeps up with the 2080, and if we turn on DLSS, we'll crush it. and if we turn on ray tracing, we'll crush it. That's obviously true. I think the fact that it doesn't have AI, it doesn't have tensor cores, kind of ruins some of its performance when it comes to actual professional applications. The lack of ray tracing is a personal, preference, especially with how few games actually have it. But Jensen wrapping it up in a very concise statement. NVIDIA not too impressed, not really going to sweat what AMD just announced. There's a lot of benchmarks out there showing just how much better RTX cards are for professional workloads because they do have the tensor cores. They've been built, Turing has been built for more async compute, just like AMD has already had. And Turing caught up in a lot of ways that Pascal was missing. And so the RTX 2080 is a much more formidable card than the 1080 Ti versus Radeon 7 for $700. And then if you want ray tracing at all, it's an extra added bonus value that you get from the NVIDIA card that you can't at all do with the AMD card at the current moment. And especially if games start to adopt it more, it might be something that, you just fall behind on with Radeon 7. Obviously, 16 gigabytes of HBM2 could be super future-proofed for like 8K displays, but most people aren't even on 4K. So why do we need 8K? Obviously, this is the cream of the crop gamer who's spending $700 on a graphics card, so it could stand to reason that they might have 8K, but I don't think that the compute performance of what we've seen from Radeon 7, given the benchmarks that they had, is even going to be able to run 8K at a proper frame rate for us to enjoy. But before I get called out for being an NVIDIA shill for talking about how the RTX 2080 is probably better than the Radeon 7 as far as which one's going to be the better buy, we obviously don't have benchmarks, so this is based off of what AMD has told us. If you even just look at what AMD currently has on the market, the Radeon 7 is a terrible value card. If you go to Newegg right now, if you want to pick up a Vega 64, you can get the reference cooler. It's $400. That is $300 less than the Radeon 7. Okay, you don't like the reference cooler, might run a little bit too hot, you can pick up the Vega 64 liquid cooled edition for $500. That is $200 off the Radeon 7, making the Radeon 7 40% more expensive than the top of the line Vega 64 that you can pick up. And with the game performance and the performance increases that they're quoting for Radeon 7, you're not even getting 40%. The best thing that we got was 62% increase in OpenCL, which if you need it, then Radeon 7 makes sense. But if you're not using OpenCL, then the 27% extra you get in Fortnite, or the 25% extra that you get, what was it, Battlefield that they quoted? Any of the game increases that they said is not anywhere close to 40% of the increase over the liquid-cooled Vega 64. The $400 regular Vega 64, that's a $300 price increase. That is a 75% bump in performance for a 25 to 40% performance gain, and that's just not worth it. It actually, honestly, the Radeon 7 just makes it so that the earlier Vega releases of 56 and 64 are super compelling at this point, which they actually are when you compare them to what's on the open market. An RTX 2070 versus a Vega 64, the Vega 64 for $400, RTX 2070 for $500 to $600, you pick up the Vega 64. It's probably going to win in several games. The RTX 2060 coming in at $350, going head to head with the Vega 56, which you can find for $300. Again, AMD is actually super compelling in the $200 to $400 region, and the Radeon 7 for that $700, which is also built on Vega, makes no sense as an increase. You could probably just buy two Vega 64s for $800 and get better frame rate in specific games when you need it. And then let's take a look at the value, the extra value that AMD is trying to incentivize. You get Devil May Cry 5, you get Division 2, and you get the Resident Evil 2 remake, which is a value of, between $150 and $180, depending on how you slice the retail pie there. NVIDIA also has a promo going on where you can get Anthem and Battlefield 5, which have deep learning super sampling and ray tracing games, so that's impressive. So it's a $120 value versus a $180 value. Except that $180 value that you get in those three games also comes with the RX 590, the Vega 56, and the Vega 64. Even the cheaper cards by AMD makes so much more sense in this scenario. If you want Vega 64 plus an extra 25%, just pick up two Vega 64s for $800. Then you have all three games that you wanted to play that you could have gotten with the Radeon 7, and you're better off. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to everyone. This is me just kind of trying to make a point towards most gamers at this point. Most gamers don't need a ton of extra performance in compute scenarios. Most gamers aren't going to need 16 gigabytes of HBM2 regardless of how much it costs. One of the biggest struggles that I have with discussing this with people, especially in YouTube comments, is them reasoning, well, you're gonna want that 16 gigabytes of HBM2 in a few years from now, aren't you? Maybe. If games continue to go up in texture size and resolution, that's possible. But with the slow rate of adoption of 4K monitors, I honestly don't think that's going to be the case. The Radeon 7 has a very limited use case. Just like the Vega 56 and 64 at the time they launched, they were too expensive for what they offered general consumers, and therefore they had a very limited reach in terms of most people's gaming systems. The only thing that saved them was mining. And it could be that the Radeon 7 is fantastic at mining. I mean, that 1 terabyte of memory bandwidth per second could be something that does really well for mining things like Monero. It's a possibility, we'll have to see. Personally, I actually like the Radeon 7. I know it doesn't sound like it. I appreciate the 4096-bit memory interface. That 1 terabyte per second of memory bandwidth is incredible, but the way they're pitching it and the way they're trying to sell it as it being a card for gamers, it really doesn't bring much to the table when you compare it to their other gaming cards like the RX Vega 64, and especially when you compare it to what NVIDIA actually has out on the open market right now. There's no telling what's gonna happen when these Radeon 7s actually come and hit Newegg, because just like with the Vega 56 and 64, there wasn't enough of them to go around. It was something like 1,000 units for the entire world, and they ended up being $200 to $300 more on Newegg than they should have been when they actually went on sale. So we don't even know if we're gonna get these for $700. It could be that we get something that's a lot more expensive, and then NVIDIA still just kind of wins. We're gonna say goodbye to the zebra and the wildebeest now. We don't want to disturb them. There is a lot that is frustrating about this. We want to get out of the monopolizing hand of NVIDIA. We don't want them to continue to dominate with their market share and shove high prices down our throats. But when AMD comes to the table and does the exact same thing, because that's all they can do, it kind of sucks. It makes us feel like we're just shaking our fists against the wind and we're not actually ever going to get something that can compete. Fortunately, Lisa Su did mention that there are more GPUs coming later this year for gamers. Hopefully that means Navi might be unveiled sometime during Computex, and we might get something that replaces Polaris in a way where we get a lot more performance for a lot less price. But the Radeon 7, which is just Vega 2, Radeon V2, Vega 2, that's all it is. It still creates this gap in the market where NVIDIA just kind of makes more sense at the top end. If you want the best gaming graphics card on the market, you get the RTX 2080 Ti. And if you want the best value graphics card, well, you know, an RX 590 might not be a bad idea. But that's exactly where we were a few months ago. The only thing that I see that this announcement did was stoke the fires of AMD versus NVIDIA debates. I can't wait for all of the comments about how wrong I am coming down and raining from heaven about my idiocy and why I should just know that the Radeon 7 is the better compute card. Of course, it's not meant for gaming, it's meant for the future. Why don't you invest in AMD to get rid of the NVIDIA monopoly? I get it. I've heard it all before. Unfortunately, AMD, yet again, has not left us with much hope when it comes to the gaming GPU division. And I'm tired of waiting, to be honest. So, with all of that being said, let me know what you think of Radeon 7. Are you excited for it? I know somebody in the previous video said that he is super excited to get this for his architectural renderings, which that's great. For compute environments, absolutely get it, 100% agree. So let me know, are you one of those people? Do you want to get this for gaming even though it's the same value as the 2080? Will you choose AMD to get rid of NVIDIA's monopoly to some extent, provided that they actually release enough cards for everybody to buy? Let me know down in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed our CES remote coverage. We have, I think, 1 or 2 more videos that we're going to be shooting. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech-related content. Again, if you want to become a patron to support our channel directly, you can do that at the link in the video description. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech Channel. Thank you so much for watching our CES remote coverage, and I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Love you too. There might be a crocodile in here. Are those the croc eyes? You see it? No, it's just a rock. Shame. Bamboozled. Oh, another. No, just a rock that's super stuck. Let me wash off my hands in dirty water. That probably has mosquito eggs in it.
Oh, yeah.
And now that I have salmonella, I'm leaving.